Keter. Keter means crown. It's the throne. And all of this was in Keter. And upon creation, Malchut descended to where we have Da'at here. Da'at meaning knowledge. But remember that Da'at is empty now. It's filled with you. It is filled with your understanding, with your experiences, with the things that happen in your life. But Malchut came to here. And so Malchut existed, the kingdom. Malchut is the kingdom. And this is the realm of the Shekinah, the realm of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And the Shekinah, it's important to understand that the Shekinah is what we would call the feminine aspects of God. God is neither male nor female. He is neither. But upon creation, he put out, he demonstrated from himself these sephirot, the attributes. The reason for the attributes is so that we as humans could understand him, could know him. Because in truth, God is unknowable. How do we as finite creatures understand the infinite one? How many of you have your cell phone with you? You own a cell phone? Let me ask you this question. Does your cell phone understand you? Does your cell phone understand you? Really? It follows command, sure, but it doesn't understand you. Because you're on a different level. In other words, this computer, I can type in information, but it doesn't understand me. I don't have a relationship with this computer. This computer cannot understand me. Even though it is created in the likeness and image of a human. By what means? Your brain is a computer, in effect. So this is man creating something in his likeness, in his image. How deistic is that? How godlike is that? And it's we're to the point now where we have artificial intelligence, where the computer is able, once it gets started, it begins to learn and understand. It is able to compute. It is able, in effect, to reason. But it will never be able to accomplish what you, as a human being, are able to accomplish. So it is with your relationship with God. You are created, B'Tselem Elohim. You are created in the image of God and in his likeness. Saying you have aspects of the divine within you. But you will never be God. You will never reach his level. There are things about him which you cannot ever know. Because you cannot comprehend. There's no way that you can, there's no way. You just can't. Oftentimes you will hear people say, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God this, or I'm going to ask God that. Don't be surprised when you get to heaven, God's going to say, it is. Sorry, because it is. It just is. That's the way it is. Because I said so. Because you don't understand. You do not have the comprehension that God has. And there's no way that you will ever have that comprehension. Why did God create Adam and Chava with the caveat, with the chink in the armor? They're not created perfect. They're created good. but they're created with a chink, with a weak point, with, as it were, an Achilles heel. They're created with the ability to fall. And the chink in the armor is what exactly we value so much: free will, choice. That's our weak spot. Singularity of purpose, we've talked about it many times. Duality of purpose. Singularity of purpose, whether you eat or drink or whatsoever you do to the glory of God. Duality of purpose, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That even whether I'm doing good or whether I'm doing evil, or even when I'm doing good, but I'm doing it in my own self-interest. But I have a choice. The Malachim, the angels of heaven, do not have choice. They do not have this weakness. They do not have this caveat. They do the will of God, period. So that it is said in our liturgy, it is said that they are created flawless. It does not say that about humanity. It says that about the Malachim, about the angels. That they are created flawless. Why? They're not given choice. They do what they are commanded to do. Without issue. Without hesitation. Instantly. And that is where they find their joy. And that's the way Adam and Chava were in the beginning, in the garden. They had singularity of purpose, to serve God. And everything they did was to serve God. What became problematic for mankind was when singularity of purpose was traded for duality. So that we have to choose to serve God or to serve ourselves. This is why if a man has been, if a male has been circumcised for reasons other than being Jewish, that is, his parents had the child circumcised for health reasons, for aesthetics, for whatever purpose. If he is going to convert to Judaism, he must be recircumcised. Now, you can't cut off what is no longer there. So we have what is called a vridam, the drawing of blood. So blood must be drawn in the name of conversion. For the purpose of becoming Jewish. Why? Because the first circumcision is that after the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's about self. The second circumcision of a person who's already been circumcised, but not in the name of God, not for the sake of heaven, must redo the circumcision because it must be done for the sake of heaven, for no other purpose. This is why when we are kindling the candles of Hanukkah, it is stated that we are to draw no other benefit from the candle than that of the pure joy of the light of the candle. We're not to use it to work. We're not to use it in order to see. We're not to use it in order to read, in order to... It is simply there. You have other lights that you use for these other purposes, but the only purpose for Hanukkah, for the candle of Hanukkah, is for the pure joy of the candle, of seeing the light of the candle. And so we even say, as we're lighting the candles, that these candles may not be used for any other purpose. These candles here, the candles here, they're not used for reading. They're not used so that I can see better. They're not used for any other purpose. This represents the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple. And so the Chazal question, can God not see that he needs candles in the Beit HaMikdash? No, that's not the purpose. The purpose is not so that they could see. The purpose is not so for something that they could work by. So the purpose was the lights faced to the Acharon, the ark. What's in the Acharon? The Torah. So the Torah is a light. And so that's what is emblematic, and that's why the candles are always facing in a line towards the ark, pointing the way. The singularity of purpose. When Adam and Chava fell, they are in Malchut. This is the creation. This is universe. This is the kingdom. So when Adam and Chava fell, we told you last week, Malchut fell with them. When Adam and Chava fell, they did not just fall alone. All of creation fell with them. All of creation. All of creation is under the curse. So Rav Shaul tells us in the book of Romans that all of creation is groaning with anticipation for redemption, which is consummated, which is made, which begins through the redemption of mankind, because he's the one who fell. He's the one who brought the curse. It is he who must be lifted up to lift the curse. But the curse covers all of creation, all of the universe. So if you go to the moon, the curse is there. If you go to the sun, you go throughout the solar system, through the galaxy, throughout the universe, wherever you go, the curse is there. You cannot escape the curse. It is there. All of creation is under the curse. With the curse, with the fall, not only did Adam and Chava fall, Malchut fell. Remember, Malchut was here. She comes down here. She ends up at the very bottom, barely hanging on. This is the realm of the Shekhinah. This is her kingdom. So she goes with her kingdom, and she is separated from Mashiach, from the Messiah. What is the war that is taking place? Do you know what the spiritual war is actually all about that is taking place? Mashiach is striving to reunite with his bride. And the enemy is continually trying to keep them separated. Because as soon as Mashiach and Shekhinah, the bride and the groom, reunite, mankind is redeemed. And it's over for the enemy. So how does the enemy win? By keeping them separated. Mashiach has not yet returned. And as I taught you last week, you remember, Mashiach and Shekhinah were not here at the same time. When Yeshua was here, the Shekhinah was not here. Which is why in Yochanan, in John, he tells the Talmudim, the disciples, I must go so that the Ruach HaKodesh can come. Because they are separated. Why? Because the divine is separated from the physical. Because of the fall. You see, at one time it was all one. The physical and the spiritual was all echad, was all one. But because of the fall, you now have this separation. So as I shared with you last week, Malchut, boom, 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 falls all the way down. As Malchut is falling down, as the kingdom is falling, the Sephirot are appearing, being revealed with each fall. It's unfolding. It's unfolding. So she's here, she falls here. Chesed and Gevurah. Here, Netzach and Chol. Here, Yesod, all the way down. As she's falling, they're being revealed. So this is the feminine side. This is the masculine side. So you have Chokhmah, wisdom, Chesed, kindness, Netzach, endurance. Here you have Chod, Gevurah, Binah, understanding, strength, judgment. That's the masculine side. As in, the father is the disciplinarian in most families. The mother is the one showing the compassion in most families. So, in effect, if you want to get out from under the burden of Papa, you go to Mama. But if you have too much Mama, it doesn't turn out good for you. But the other side is if you have too much Papa, it doesn't turn out good for you. That's why the good family is one with a mother and a father. And it's the two of them working together that balance each other out. And that's what Judaism is always searching for, balance. Judgment, yes, but not too much. Kindness, yes, but not too much. There must be a balance. And so, the Shekinah falls with her kingdom. And so, we spoke to you last week concerning this, that there are these two aspects of Malchut, of the Shekinah, called Hitnasut. Everyone say Hitnasut, which means exaltation. Exaltation. And Shiflut. Everyone say Shiflut, which means humility. Because she is a queen, i.e. a king. Malchut comes from Melech. Melech means king. Thus Malchut, kingdom. So she is exalted. But at the same time, she has been humiliated. She has been humiliated by the citizens of her kingdom. And so she's at the top, yet she's at the bottom. She is part of Keter, yet she also exists down here alone. Coming from Keter, that's her exaltedness, her exaltation, that she's part of the reign of the king. She's part of the throne. But that she's at the bottom, under all of it, is her humility. We think of ourselves, and this is greatly in Christianity, as being, in Christianity, it is called the bride of Christ. the bride of the Mashiach. Literally, the bride of the Mashiach is the Shekhinah. You are the bride in the aspect that the Shekhinah, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, dwells within you, that you are the Beit HaMikdash, the temple of the Ruach HaKodesh. You're the temple. Ruach HaKodesh is the Spirit of God within the temple. She is, and we call her she. Yes, the Brit Chadashah speaks in masculine form, but technically is Shekhinah, is feminine. We know that it's feminine because it ends in a he. Shekhinah, A-H, if you're seeing it in a transliteration. So when a noun in Hebrew, a noun ends in a he, in the H, Sarah, S-A-R-A-H. That makes that word feminine. So the Shekhinah, S-H-E-K-H-I-N-A-H, Shekhinah, is feminine. Why? Because she's representing the feminine aspects of the attributes of God, of the Sefirot. The word Yeshua, from which we have the name of Mashiach, Yeshua is actually feminine. Salvation, the word salvation, Yeshua. Yud, Ein, Shin, Yud, Shin, Vav, Ein. He. In English transliteration, Y-E-S-H-U-A-H. To make it a masculine name in Hebrew, you have to drop the H, the he, off of it, so that you have the spelling Yeshua in masculine form. And we're not going to go down the rabbit trail of the transliteration of the name or whatever. People call him Jesus. That is fine. Don't get in the weeds. It's a senseless argument. It's just a matter of transliteration to transliteration. From Hebrew to Greek to Latin to the Teutonic languages, German, English, whatever. That's all it is. So, Malchut is in this state of exaltation and humility at the same time. You, being the dwelling place of the Shekhinah, you are also in this duality of exaltation and humility. And the key is to find the balance. The key is to find the balance. What do I mean by that? Because we are not to be so exalted that we're full of ourselves. The other hand is that you're not to be so humble that you're an embarrassment. You're humble, yet you are in exaltation. You are a child of the King. But you are in exaltation by means of humility. That you're there, but you don't deserve to be there. What do we mean by that? Well, we're coming to Pesach. And the day after Pesach, we begin a tradition, a command through Torah, of doing what we call the counting of the Old Mare. The counting of the Old Mare, in a physical terms, in a physical way, what would occur is that the most people in Israel of the time were agrarians. They were farmers. They raised crops, cattle, animals, things like that. And this is why Pesach is determined by the barley harvest. Aviv, the month Aviv, is our next month. Aviv means spring. It means basically to blossom or to bud. So barley is planted. It is the first crop to be planted, and it is actually planted in the wintertime because it buds early. It blossoms early. And so the way that the Sanhedrin knew that it was time for Aviv, because, as you know, the solar clock and the lunar clock don't always get along. They're not in agreement. They're on different systems, different rotations. Here in the West, we live by solar time. Even the months of the year, even though they're called months, they don't follow the moon. They follow the sun. We follow a solar calendar. The Muslims follow a lunar calendar, solely a lunar calendar. Because of this, their festivals always occur in a different time of the year. They're never static. They're never the same. They're always occurring in a different place. So Ramadan can fall in the winter. It can fall in the summer. It can fall in the spring. It can go in the autumn. It just depends on what the cycle of the moon has been. So the sun and the moon do not follow the same time cycles. This is why every few years, following the solar calendar, we have to have a leap year, where a day is added to the month of February. And this keeps us in check with the solar calendar. If you are following Judaism, we follow both a solar and a lunar calendar. Aviv, Pesach must always occur in the spring. It doesn't move. It doesn't change. Rosh Hashanah always falls in the fall. Now there can be variation from the solar calendar by a means of from March 15th, Pesach, from March 15th to April 15th. So there can be a variation of a month, and it can fall within that month period. Rosh Hashanah can fall from September 15th to October 15th. But every so often, for example, this year, an additional month is added to the year. So we are now in Adar 2, Adar Sheni, to adjust, because if we don't adjust, Pesach is already in April 15th, the very last day that it is permitted. So a month has been added so that next year, Pesach is going to be shoved back to March. But the way that the Sanhedrin knew was that they would send witnesses out into the field. The barley would be coming up, and would be if it has put forth the seed, the grain, and when the barley has grain, and it's a new moon, that's Aviv. So the barley must sprout, and there be a new moon. And they will actually go out, and it can't just sprout. They would actually have to go out, take the grains of barley, and squeeze it between their fingers, because it would be a color of greenish, reddish, brownish, because it's turning, getting ready, because in 15 days the barley harvest begins. So they would go out, they would squeeze it, see what the water content was. You will see farmers doing that today. I grew up on a farm. We would raise grain. One of the ways that the farmer knows that it's time to, for example, sorghum, what we raise, one of the ways is that you go out, you walk through the field and you pull different places from the field and you squeeze it and you see how much water comes out of the grain. If it is dry, if no water comes out, that means it's ready for harvest. Because you don't want water in the grain, because that will ruin the grain. So it must be completely dry. And so this is how they determined the month. So as they entered into Pesach, and we enter into the festival of unleavened bread, they would begin counting the Omer. And basically what would happen is it would be 50 days from the grain harvest, from the barley harvest to the wheat harvest. Otherwise called Shavuot. 50 days. 49 plus 1. Pentecost in Christianity. And so from Bikurim, the festival of the first fruit of the barley harvest, until Shavuot, the festival of the harvest of the wheat, is 50 days. So the farmer, what would happen is it was called the counting of the Omer. Omer is about a handful. The farmer would go into the barn and he would take out a handful of barley, which was the animal feed. He would take out a handful of the barley and he would put it aside. Meaning the animal did not get the barley. Every day the animal was shorted a handful of barley. So every day the farmer would go in, he would stick his hand in. Remember, everything must be done with purpose, with intent. So he would stick his hand in, pull out a handful of grain, and he would dedicate that grain. This is the first day of the counting of the Omer. This is the first handful of barley, and he would set it aside. The next day, this is the second day of the counting of the Omer. This is the third day of the counting of the Omer. Well, one of the things that we do, and by the way, the reason, what is the teaching of that? The teaching of that is to train your animal instinct. Because you have an animal instinct. So the purpose is the animal was learning not to eat so much. Deprive the animal. You starve the animal so that you can feed the spirit. And so what we do in the counting of the Omer is we go through the Sefirot. One of the things that we have taught you is that within every Sefirot, within every Sefirah, is all the other Sefirot. So within Malchut, you have Yesod, Chod, Netzach, Tiferet, Chesed, Gevurah, Da'at, Chokmah, Binah. So the first day, so you go through a whole week of going through 7 Sefirot within Malchut. So you say Yesod within Malchut, Netzach within Chod within Malchut, Tiferet within Chesed within, Gevurah within, Da'at within. And there's a lesson that you learn on each day. The next week, Yesod, Malchut within Yesod, Yesod within Yesod, Chod within, Netzach, Tiferet, Chesed, all the way. And because within each Sefirah are all the other Sefirot. Saying that within Malchut is all of this. Just as all of this was in Keter in the beginning. Now, why is that important? Where is Malchut? Location. Where is Malchut? Saying that Malchut has nothing of herself. She's empty. She has nothing of herself. Everything that Malchut has comes from all the other Sefirot. This is important for you to understand. For me to understand. I am nothing. I have nothing. I deserve nothing. That's the humility. What I do have, I receive. You see, this is me. The kingdom, that's me, that's you. Everything that we have comes from above. You are not your own. And you do not have by your own. What foundation you have, Yesod, what foundation you have, what solidity in your life you have because of Hashem, because of God. What teachings you learn, what endurance you have, what beauty you have, what kindness you have, what strength you have, what knowledge you have, what understanding you have, what wisdom you have. The very fact that you are in the realm of the King, it all comes from above. Yet all of this is within you. That's the exaltation. He did not leave you. Remember, that's how we ended last week, talking about that. He said, I would not leave you comfortless. That even when Adam and Chava fell, God did not leave them and He did not forsake them. Rather, what? He left them the Shekinah. So, turn to Yaakov, the book of James. And watch. The book of James. Yaakov, chapter 1. Verse 9. Everything that I just told you. Everything that I just told you, it's right there. Not in what is called the Old Testament. But let the brother in humble circumstances, listen to the words, in humble circumstances, boast in his high position. Exactly what I just told you. You're in humble circumstances, boast in your high position. Because in fact, you are exalted. Even in your humility. You're a child of the King. Don't hang your head. Walk erect with your head up. Even in bad times and in difficult times, we are to walk with our heads erect. Walk with the understanding that we are in exalted positions. But the rich person, let him boast in his humble position. What? When you're being exalted, remember where you came from. Remember who you are. And that the truth is, we deserve none of this. Saying what? When you're down here, when you're in your worst times, in your lowest times, don't be so low. Take comfort in the fact that you are exalted. But when you're being exalted, when God is blessing you and overflowing you, don't be so full of yourself that you forget it's not about you. And it didn't come from you. It came from Him. Because like the flower of the grass, He will pass away. For the sun arises with a scorching heat and withers the grass, and its flower falls off, and the beauty of its appearance is destroyed. So also the rich man in the midst of his pursuits will also wither away. Happy is the one in Hod. Gevurah. In Hod, in endurance. That's the realm, by the way. This is the realm of the prophets. What do you mean the realm of the prophets? This is where Eliyahu calls down fire from heaven to burn not only the sacrifice, but the altar, not only the altar, but the 50 gallons of water that filled the ditch. This is where Moshe puts his rod in the water and the Red Sea parts. This is where, as we were learning this morning, Moshe, with his hands raised, pulled down the power of heaven to defeat Malachim. This is the realm. This is where you get your prayers answered. How many of you would like to have your prayers answered? Yes? Well, this is where you get it answered. And it's called endurance. What is endurance? What do we mean endurance? Well, we'll get there in time. But it comes through submission. Not escape. Going through. You see, when you're taking a test in the classroom, it's not a good thing to tell the teacher, I don't want to take this test. And it's not a good thing. You can, and you can get up and you can walk out of the classroom. That's your prerogative. But if you do that, what? You have to come back and do it again. You have to repeat the whole class and do it all over again. Better to go ahead and take the test and get it behind you. Oftentimes we cry out to God to remove the test. We're trying to walk out of the classroom. And God says, okay, just understand that you're going to have to do it again. It's better to go through the testing. Happy is the one who endures testing. Did you know that the chastisement, the discipline of God upon our lives is actually not to be a sad thing for us, but a happy thing for us? That we are commanded, rejoice in all things with thanksgiving. The hard times are there to bring about our joy and our gladness. Because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, because it's not about now, it's about Olam Haba, the world to come. What we're going through now, just a short endurance, just a short thing. But the world to come, everlasting forever. He says, verse 16, do not be deceived. My dear brothers and sisters, you've all heard this verse. Do not be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Listen. Every good gift and every perfect gift. Watch. Can you finish the verse? Then, did anybody know this verse? Where? Above. Every good gift and every perfect gift. Literally, what the Greek says here is every good giving and every perfect receiving comes from above. What? All of this is found in Malchut. Not by, Malchut has nothing of herself. She's empty. But every good gift and every perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights. By the way, what's the first creation of God? What's the first act of creation? Let there be light. Why? Because God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Saying that everything that comes down to you is light, is a form of light to remove the darkness that's in your life, in your heart, in your soul, in your mind. Now he says, every gift, every good gift, every perfect gift. That's Yesod. That's Nesach. That's Chesed. Oh, Chesed. We love Chesed, right? Loving kindness, grace, mercy. We love those things. God is love. Huh? Chokhmah, wisdom. All the good stuff. But he doesn't say all the feminine side. He says all of them. That means that Chod is from above. That means that Gevorah is from above. That our judgment is from above. That our discipline is coming from above. That our chastisement is coming from above. And that it is given to us for good. It is given to us to bring light into our darkened souls. And we are to be happy. We are to rejoice in our humility. Saying, when God brings the difficult days to us, when God brings the hard days to us, the sicknesses and the infirmities, the financial situations, family situations, friends, whatever it may be, when those difficult days come, it's not to be looked at as a bad thing, but as a good thing, and we are to rejoice in those things. This is part of being Hasidic, the Hasidim. One of the things, the Hasidim is actually what we are, Hasidut is actually what we are after. Hasidut comes from Chesed. That we accept what God sends to us with joy, with rejoicing and thanksgiving. Be it what the flesh would consider to be good or bad, because we know that it is from above and we know that it is bringing light to us. Every good gift, every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. Now watch. With whom there is no variation. What? God doesn't change his mind. The Torah is the Torah is the Torah, and God has not and he will not turn from his Torah. It is, it is. Or let me hurt Ciro's ears. It is what it is. There's no variation with him. There's no variableness with him. You know, you can have this variable or that variable, right? There's a big thing in Reformed Judaism today about how much Torah applies to us today, because we're in this different age, this different time, whatever. No, with God there is no variation, there's no variables. It says there's not even a shadow of turning. It does not even appear that he's going to turn away from his word. That's why you can trust him, because he is not like a man who lies. He says it, he does it. In fact, when he says it, it is as good as done as soon as he says it. By his will, he brought us forth by the word of truth, so that we might be a kind of first fruits, bikurim, of all that he created. Now, I want to show you one last thing before we close. Because, to quote a famous president, this is all called trickle-down economics. It is. Because everything trickles down. Why? Right up there. The fountain that flows from where? The throne of God. This is, remember, Shekinah and her relation to water. This is the living water flowing down to fill the cup of Malchut. Because Malchut is empty. Zechariah chapter 14. Behold, a day of Adonai is coming, when your plunder will be divided in your midst. I will give all the nations against Jerusalem. I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to wage war. The city shall be captured, the houses ransacked, the women ravished. Half of the city will be exiled. There's a bad day coming for Israel. And you're seeing the hookup of it. You're seeing the lining up of all of this. What you're seeing with Russia and Ukraine and all of that, and China and all of that, it's all prophesied, and it is for the bringing about of the events of this day. But the remainder of the people will not be cut off from the city. Then Adonai will go forth and fight against those nations as he fights in a day of battle. We're going to see the same thing in our day with our eyes that Moshe and the children of Israel saw in their eyes. In that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which lies to the east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a huge valley. Whose feet? Mashiach. Half of the mountain will move toward the north, and half of it toward the south. Then you will flee through my mountain valley, because the mountain valley will reach to Asel. Yes, you will flee like you fled from the earthquake in the days of King Uzziah of Judah. Then Adonai, my God, will come, and all the Keloshim with him. Does that sound familiar? Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints. In that city, what city? Jerusalem. In that day there will be no light, cold, or frost. It will be a day known only to Adonai, neither day nor night. Even in the evening time there will be light. Moreover, in that day living waters will flow from Jerusalem, half toward the eastern sea, half toward the western sea, both in summer and in winter. Adonai will then be king over all the earth. In that day, Adonai will be echad. Shemo Adonai echad. Shemo echad. Adonai will be one, and his name shall be one. We say that every Shabbat. Speaking to this day. What is flowing from Jerusalem? The water of life. Where's it going? Out to the nations. Where's it coming from? Beit HaMikdash. Jerusalem, the Beit HaMikdash. What is the Beit HaMikdash? Keter. That's the throne of God. Revelation 22. Go. We're done. Then the angel showed me a river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb down the middle of the city street. And on either side of the river was a tree of life. What? Yeah, the one that was in the garden. Why did they never eat of the tree of life? Because they did not need to. Because they were innocent. Because the purpose of the tree is for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in the city, and his servants shall serve him. What is this city? Jerusalem. We learned in Christianity that we're going up to heaven and we're going to live up in heaven. No, heaven's coming down to earth. Because you see, Jerusalem is Eden, Gan Eden. That's the Garden of Eden. That's where man was created. And that's where God's going to place his throne. It's amazing that in Jerusalem, in Gan Eden, there was the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. 4,000 years later, there are 3 trees there. There was the tree of judgment, the thief on one side, the tree of mercy, the thief on the other side, and the tree in the middle. The tree of beauty, the tree of life, on which Yeshua Mashiach comes. You see, as it was in the beginning, so it shall be in the end. And as it is in the end, so it shall be in the beginning. What? The Aleph and the Tav, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending. We're going around the cycle, and we're almost to the end of the cycle, and we're getting ready to go back to Eden. We're going back to that pure, holy state of Adon and Chava in the beginning. That's what this is all about, to get us back to there. Notice how similar Revelation chapter 22 and Zechariah 14 are. Because the New Jerusalem it comes down. Is there a rapture? Yes. In fact, Nachmanides actually speaks of a rapture. Rapture is not a new thing. There is precedent for rapture. This is not going to be the first rapture. Nachmanides says that when Moshe came out from Pharaoh the last time, and all of Israel were congregated at Ramses, Nachmanides says that the way the Hebrew speaks, it is that they disappeared from Ramses and they appeared in Sukkot in the twinkling of an eye. In fact, when you read the words of Nachmanides, the Jewish rabbi Nachman, when you read Nachmanides, it sounds very much what Rav Shaul says. That they disappeared from Ramses, they were caught up and moved to Sukkot. Notice the name of the place, the first place where they were moved to, Sukkot. What is the first festival we're going to celebrate with the king? Sukkot. And all the world shall come up. see, what's going to happen is we're going to go through hard things. I'm not a pre-tribber. I'm not a mid-tribber. Why? That's to hold perfect submission, not being removed from the testing. It's not that Noah was taken out of the flood. He went through the flood. But he went through the flood in the ark. It's not that the children of Israel were taken out of the wilderness. They went through the wilderness, but the presence of God was with them at all times. And so it shall be with us. But what's going to happen is Mashiach is going to come down with the shout of the archangel, with the blast of the shofar. And Israel, all of Israel, will be caught up to meet him in the air, to be transported. Where? To Jerusalem. There we shall rule and reign with him forever and ever. Heaven on earth. Like the days, we say it, like the days of heaven on earth. And so we will continue with Malchut again next week, God willing. And so we'll close here and say Shabbat Shalom. Cito, would you close in prayer?